The text popped up while I was staring out over Lake Michigan from the 36th floor. Just 5 words. That was all she sent. Just Kelsey's family this year. Keeping it small. That was it. No, hope you're well. No, we'll miss you. Just cold. Dismissive. Like I was some old coworker they barely remembered inviting last year. I locked my phone and set it face down on my desk. My office was all glass and chrome, with a custom walnut desk I'd had flown in from Oregon. The kind of place that should have screamed success. But in that moment, I felt like I was back in Des Moines, 13 years old, standing at the bottom of the stairs while my parents threw a surprise birthday party for Kelsey, 2 weeks after they'd forgotten mine. I looked out at the water, fists clenched. My name's Brian. I'm 38. I live in Chicago. Built a private security firm from scratch. Sold it last year for $90 million. Didn't inherit it. Didn't marry into it. I earned every damn cent. But to them, I was still the quiet one. The outsider. Quick note, before we start, how's your day going and where are you joining from? Kelsey was the golden child. Still is. She stayed close, married a guy from high school, popped out 3 kids by 30. She's a nurse now. PTA president, everyone's favorite daughter, sister, cousin. Her kids have matching pajamas in the Christmas card photos. That kind of thing. I wasn't even mad. Not anymore. Just done. I had spent the past few years building something no one in my family even knew about. 42 acres in Montana. A lakefront cabin that could sleep 30. My plan was to finally bring them all together, host Thanksgiving there, surprise them, show them I hadn't just done all right, I'd built something real. But I guess they didn't need me. Picked up my phone again, typed 1 word, enjoy. Then I tossed it onto the desk and stood up. That was the moment. The exact second I decided I was never going to show up where I wasn't wanted again. No more begging for a seat at their table. I had my own now. I just hadn't invited anyone to it yet. But that was about to change. Fast. I walked out of my office and hit the elevator button hard. I had plans to make. I stepped into the elevator and hit the button for the lobby, but my head was already 1,000 miles away, back in Des Moines. Back in that beige 2-story house on 83rd Street where the living room always smelled like Glade plugins and burnt coffee, where Kelsey's cross-country trophies lined the mantel like she'd conquered Rome. And me? I had a shoebox full of soldered circuit boards stashed under my bed that no one ever asked about. Growing up, I was just the quiet one. That's what they called me. Teachers, neighbors, my own parents. They said it like it explained everything. Kelsey's the natural. Brian's the quiet one. She ran track, played clarinet, worked the concession stand at football games, made varsity her sophomore year and won state for cross-country senior year. There was a write-up in the Des Moines Register with a photo of her holding the trophy, grinning like a damn Nike ad. My mom laminated it and stuck it on the fridge. That same year, I fixed Dad's old ham radio. Thing had been dead for 20 years. Took me 3 months. Scavenged parts off eBay. Rewired the internals with a soldering iron I bought with birthday money from Grandma. Got the thing buzzing again. Tuned it into a live feed from Anchorage. You'd think I cured cancer. Dad didn't say a word. Just turned it off and said, "Don't waste electricity." That was normal. I was into circuits, power grids, Morse code, anything with wires and gears and a signal. It was my whole world. To them, it was a hobby, a phase. They'd pat my head and say, "That's nice, buddy," then switch the conversation back to Kelsey's practice times or her boyfriend's new promotion at the HVAC company. I applied to the University of Michigan for computer engineering. Full scholarship. Got in early. When I told Dad, he looked up from the TV and asked, "Why not just stay close? Help me at the shop?" Like I'd turned down Harvard to sell tires in Polk County. Family dinners were the same script every time. Kelsey would go on about nursing clinicals or her boyfriend Tyler's plan to open his own business. Mom would ask 10 follow-up questions. Dad would nod and say, "That boy's a worker." Me? I'd mention a robotics project or a grant I got, and they'd blink at me like I was speaking Latin. They forgot my birthday twice. The first time I was 17. I didn't say anything, just stayed in my room all day and waited to see if anyone noticed. They didn't. Kelsey came in after dinner and said, "Weren't you gonna come down?" I said, "Nah, just tired." She looked confused. I never brought it up again. The second time I was 23, already in Michigan, barely scraping by. I got a card in the mail 2 weeks late. One of those cheap glossy photo prints, Kelsey's family at the pumpkin patch. Her kids in matching flannel. No note, not even happy birthday. Just a picture and the return address. I remember flipping it over and checking if something was written on the back. Nothing, just blank. That kind of thing stays with you. It builds up over the years. Every missed question, every ignored update, every time someone said, "Oh yeah, Brian's doing something with computers, right?" Like I was just orbiting in the background while Kelsey ran the whole show. But I didn't complain. Not once. I just kept moving. Built my own little world in garages, dorm rooms, and late-night labs. Let them have their small-town royalty. I knew I was meant for something bigger. Still, I can't lie, it stung. No matter how far I got, part of me kept hoping they'd turn around and say, "Hey, we see you now." But they never did. Not until I forced them to. I didn't wait for recognition. I stopped needing it. After college, I packed what I had into the back of a 10-year-old Civic and started hopping city to city. Didn't matter where. Cleveland, Milwaukee, Toledo. Just needed cheap rent and Wi-Fi. I crashed in basements, slept on air mattresses that gave out by morning. Woke up with back pain and kept coding through it. The idea came from a story I couldn't shake. A woman in Iowa who was murdered after calling 911 3 times and no one got there in time. I thought, what if there was a faster way? Something discreet, something smart. So I built it. A safety alert app for domestic violence shelters. Users could hit one button, no calls, no talking, and nearby responders would get the GPS and an alert ping, like Amber Alerts but targeted and quiet. I pitched it to anyone who'd listen. Most didn't. I worked out of diners, libraries, old warehouse corners. The first version of the app barely functioned. But I didn't give up. I rewrote the code, updated the back end, learned security frameworks from scratch. It wasn't about profit. It was about getting it in the right hands. Meanwhile, I ate canned tuna and burnt toast for months. Not because I was some startup martyr, I was broke. I nearly went bankrupt twice, but I refused to miss payroll for my dev team, even when it meant skipping meals or selling my last decent laptop and borrowing a beater. One winter in Detroit, crime hit the roof. Police were overwhelmed. Women's shelters couldn't keep up. A shelter director I'd worked with called me crying, said she needed the app now. I pushed an update live that night. By the end of the week, the system had spread across 6 precincts. A lieutenant gave me a shot. We ran a pilot. Response times dropped by 30% in 1 month. Shelters started reaching out from other cities. The app went viral, not in the flashy social media way, but in the way that mattered. Quiet, fast, life-saving. Within 2 years, I had operations in 4 states, 22 employees, law enforcement contracts, grants, nonprofit partnerships, all word of mouth. No one from Des Moines even knew it existed. And then came the offer. A national defense firm reached out, said they wanted to amplify the infrastructure, offered a number that made me blink. I took it, not for the payday, though I won't lie, it was massive, but because I knew what I needed to do next. Disappear. I didn't throw a party, didn't post about it, just walked away. I bought 42 acres of forest land in Montana, near Flathead Lake. No neighbors, no noise, just thick trees, a private trail, and views that made you forget the world was burning. I hired a local crew to build the cabin. Not a mansion, I didn't want anything loud. Just solid beams, natural wood, huge windows, a wraparound deck, and enough space to sleep 30 if I needed. It had its own solar setup, a backup generator, and heated floors for the winters. It was the kind of place that breathed. Peaceful, quiet, strong. Exactly what I never had growing up. And I didn't tell anyone. Not one person from back home. Not even my cousin Matt. I just lived. Woke up to the sound of elk on the ridge. Cooked my own meals. Chopped my own firewood. Sat on the porch at night with a glass of bourbon, watching the stars explode over the lake. No calls. No questions. No pretending. I had finally built something no one could take from me. Not because they didn't want to, but because they didn't even know it was there. And I liked it that way. That first night, back in Chicago, I didn't turn the lights on when I walked in. Just dropped my keys, kicked off my shoes, and went straight to the kitchen. Poured 2 fingers of whiskey, no ice. Sat down at the dining table, phone in hand, and stared at it for a long minute. Then I called Matt. He picked up on the second ring. "Yo, everything good?" I didn't bother easing in. "Did you get invited to Thanksgiving?" He hesitated. That told me everything. "Nah, man, nothing this year." "Grandma?" "Nope, not even Aunt Julie or them. Just keeping it small. First time ever." "Kelsey's idea?" Matt let out a short laugh. "Who else would it be?" I took a long sip. "I've got a place now, in Montana. Big enough for everyone." He paused. "Wait, Montana? Like a house?" "Cabin estate," I said. 42 acres. On a lake. "Jesus, you serious?" "I'm hosting Thanksgiving. Tell whoever you want. Grandma, cousins, whoever didn't make the guest list. Flights are on me." Matt didn't say anything for a second. Then, "I'm in." no hesitation. Grandma's gonna lose her mind. I hope she does. I hung up and sent a few texts. Then I finished the bottle. By morning, my phone was buzzing nonstop. Aunt Julie said yes before I could even finish my coffee. Uncle Mark texted, "I thought you moved to Seattle?" Cousin Ratch asked if her twins could come, said they've never been on a plane before. Everyone was in. Even Grandma texted, "Matt says you have a lake house. I'm packing a sweater. Red heart." That was the first emoji she'd ever sent me. By noon, I was coordinating flight times. By evening, I had 12 confirmed RSVPs. It hit me hard. This was actually happening. After all the years of being the extra chair, the forgotten invitation, the afterthought, I was the one hosting Thanksgiving. Not Kelsey. Not my parents. Me. And here's the thing, not one of them asked about her. No one said, "Is Kelsey coming?" Or "Should we loop in your mom?" It was like everyone had just accepted the unspoken truth. This year, things were different. This year, I wasn't waiting to be invited. This year, I was the one opening the door. The second I locked in the RSVPs, I booked the flight. No delays, no second guessing. I had 10 days until Thanksgiving, and the place needed to be perfect. When I landed in Kalispell, the cold hit me like a wall, dry, crisp, quiet. I drove straight out to the ridge. My caretaker, Joel, was already out front splitting firewood when I pulled in. Mid-50s, Vietnam vet's posture, flannel always tucked in. Trusted him with everything out here. He wiped his hands and nodded. "Didn't expect you till Friday. Holiday plans changed," I said. "Big crowd coming." He raised an eyebrow. "Family?" "Yeah," I said. For the first time, we got to work fast. He handled the grounds. Trail cleared, hot tub scrubbed, firewood stacked neat by the porch. I focused on the inside. I ordered fresh linens for all the guest rooms. High thread count, soft but not showy. Put together welcome baskets for each room. Hand warmers, local coffee, trail mix, and a note with their names on it. Not fancy, just real. I stocked both fridges with snacks I hadn't touched in years. Root beer for Uncle Mark, peanut brittle for Grandma, orange slices and red vines for the kids. I even ordered those old ice cream cups with the wooden spoons, the kind we used to get after soccer games. Then I called in a local chef from town, younger guy, ex-Portland, now cooking farm-to-table out of a food truck. Told him I wanted Thanksgiving traditional but not boring. Real turkey, not dry, mashed sweet potatoes, cranberry compote, stuffing with sausage. He was all in. I hired a driver service to do 3 airport runs, just in case the snow came in heavy. Joel offered to do one of them himself. I booked out the small lodge 2 miles down the trail for overflow. It was a cozy, rustic spot with a fireplace and 10 clean beds. The manager owed me a favor. I paid to replace their busted furnace last winter. The house itself, it was ready, but I added the touches that mattered. Cleaned the fireplace and laid out the birch logs in a pyramid, ready to go. Heated the floors ahead of time so no one had to wake up with cold feet. Put fresh candles on the big oak table. Set out puzzles in the den, board games on the shelves, wrapped blankets on every armchair. Turned the place into something between a lodge and a memory. The back deck stretched the full width of the cabin, overlooking the lake. I set out chairs with wool cushions, a few propane heaters, and a coffee station so people could sit out there in the mornings. Watch the fog roll over the trees. I didn't want it to feel expensive. I wanted it to feel thoughtful. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I just wanted them to arrive and feel, maybe for the first time, that someone gave a damn. And this time, that someone was me. Thanksgiving morning, I was already dressed and pouring coffee before the sun came up. Frost covered the windows. Joel had started the fire in the main room, and the whole place smelled like cedar and fresh bread. The first SUV rolled up around 8. Matt climbed out in a worn hoodie, wife and 2 kids right behind him. He just stood there for a second, looking up at the cabin like it was something out of a movie. "Holy shit," he said. "This is yours." I stepped onto the porch and handed him a mug of coffee. "You think I borrowed it for the weekend?" He laughed, shook his head. "Nah, man. Damn." The kids ran inside. Matt's wife gave me a long hug like we were old friends. We weren't, but that didn't matter. I gave them the room on the 2nd floor with the mountain view. Joel grabbed their bags. 10 minutes later, Uncle Mark showed up in a rented minivan, already blasting Springsteen. When he stepped inside, he just froze in the foyer. "This is all you?" he asked, spinning in a slow circle. "Yep," he grinned. "No offense, kid, but I thought you were living in a studio in Chicago eating cup noodles." "Upgraded," I said, handing him a bottle of root beer. By 10, we had a full house. Cousin Ratch with her twins, Aunt Julie and her partner, A few others came straight from the airport with the driver I hired. Joel kept things moving, luggage inside, people to their rooms, fireplace roaring, snacks restocked. Everyone said the same thing. This place is insane. You built this. I didn't brag, just smiled, handed out drinks, walked them through the hallways like I'd done it 100 times. We gathered out on the back deck once the sun broke through, coffee cups in hand, wool blankets draped over shoulders. The lake shimmered below, wind moving through the trees like a whisper. Nobody said much, just sat with it. Then the door creaked open behind us, and Grandma stepped out. She had her scarf wrapped tight, old coat buttoned to the chin. Joel had helped her up the back steps. She walked over slowly, looked around at the view, at the people, at me. "You did good, kid," she said. That was it. No speech, no tears, just those 4 words. I nodded once, swallowed hard, and handed her a chair. The chef showed up around noon with his crew. Kitchen came alive fast. Garlic, thyme, butter, slow-roasted everything. People wandered in and out, stealing bites, laughing, catching up. I set the long oak table myself. No kids' table. No adults-only section. Everyone sat together, family style. The way it should have always been. We passed dishes with real silverware. Nobody fought over the last roll. Nobody told the kids to quiet down. It was loud, messy, warm, like the holidays I used to picture in my head when I was the one washing dishes alone in my dorm room. And here's the thing, not one person mentioned Kelsey. Not her name, not her absence, nothing. It wasn't a protest. It wasn't shady. It was just peaceful, like maybe they'd finally stopped orbiting around her, too. The next morning, I woke up to my phone vibrating off the nightstand. 8 missed calls, 3 texts from Mom, 2 from Kelsey, 1 from Dad, no words, just a thumbs-up emoji and a question mark. I stared at the screen, still half asleep, then flipped it over face down. Got dressed, made eggs, took a walk down to the dock with a thermos of coffee and sat there until the wind got too cold for my fingers. They didn't get to hijack my morning. The rest of the house was quiet. Most of the family had already flown out by then. A few were still asleep in the overflow lodge. Grandma was curled up on the couch in the living room, watching the fireplace like it was telling her a story. I poured a whiskey, sat across from her, and finally picked up my phone again. Mom's last message. "We heard what you did. Why didn't you tell us?" I hit call. She answered like she'd been waiting. "Brian, why didn't you tell us? We had no idea you were doing all this." I kept my voice flat. "You said you were keeping it small." There was a pause. Then she laughed nervously. "Oh honey, that wasn't meant like that. Kelsey thought it would be easier. Less stress this year. It wasn't personal." "Mom," I said, "you cut out everyone, not just me. Grandma, Uncle Mark, Matt. You didn't invite a single person outside Kelsey's bubble." Another pause. "We didn't think it would be a big deal. Kelsey offered to host and you didn't think at all." Her voice dropped. "Brian, come on." Across the room, Grandma turned her head. I didn't say anything, just held up the phone and she nodded. I hit speaker. Grandma leaned forward, hands folded. "Put me on, Brian." Mom's voice wavered. Is that your grandmother? You ignored him his whole life," Grandma said, voice sharp but calm. "Birthday cards late, no calls, no visits. But you always had time for Kelsey's kids, Kelsey's job, Kelsey's everything." "Mom, that's not fair." "It is. It's exactly fair. You had no idea he'd built something, because you never asked, because you didn't want to know unless it fit the picture in your head." No one spoke. Grandma kept going. "He brought all of us together this week, not out of guilt, not to show off, out of love, real generous love. Be grateful he still opened the door." I stared at the fire, listening to it crackle behind the silence on the line. Finally, Dad's voice chimed in faintly from the background. "We didn't mean any harm." Grandma didn't even flinch. "Meaning well doesn't mean much when you never show up." I ended the call. No goodbye, no cleanup, just let it go quiet and let the fire keep burning. I set the phone down on the coffee table and didn't touch it for the rest of the night. Didn't say a word, didn't need to. The fire kept popping, low and steady. Grandma pulled the blanket up to her chin and didn't ask a single thing. The house was quiet, not empty, just still, like it was finally allowed to breathe. I felt the weight of it settle in. Years of being talked over, brushed aside, forgotten on purpose. It all just sat there, not in an angry way, just real. The next day, the messages started rolling in. Dad's came first, just 3 words. "Proud of you." No punctuation, no follow-up. Then Mom, "Can we come visit?" She didn't say when, just asked like it would undo something. Kelsey's came last. "Sorry if that hurt you." Wasn't trying to. No ownership. No asking how I was. Just a drive-by apology. I didn't answer any of them. Let them sit unread for days. I wasn't trying to be cold. I just wasn't ready to reward silence with a round of applause because they finally noticed I existed. Meanwhile, Grandma stayed an extra 3 nights, slept late, read on the deck, watched the birds like it was a sport. She didn't hover, didn't push. One morning, I stocked the fridge with her favorite cookies, those thick shortbread ones with raspberry in the middle, and left the box front and center like a flag. She found them, smiled, and didn't say anything. That meant more than any text I'd gotten. The cousins started messaging next, not with guilt, with excitement. Let's do this again next year. Can we help plan the next one? My kids won't stop talking about the puzzle room. They weren't asking for permission. They were already in. It hit me then. This wasn't about the people who didn't show up. It was about the ones who did. The ones who sat at the long table and passed dishes without comparing names or titles. The ones who laughed on the deck and hugged like they meant it. The ones who didn't care that the host had once been the quiet one. This was mine now. Not in a prideful way. Not even in a vengeful way. Just in a real way. They came because they wanted to, and I was done chasing people who didn't. It snowed heavy the day they came back. I was standing on the porch in a flannel shirt and boots when the SUV crawled up the driveway, tires crunching through fresh powder. Same silver Ford Kelsey always drove, packed full, her husband at the wheel, kids pressed up against the windows, my parents squeezed in the back. They parked and just sat there for a second, like they weren't sure what was waiting inside. I didn't wave, didn't walk down to greet them. Just opened the front door and said one word. Welcome. Kelsey climbed out first, brushing snow off her sleeves. It's beautiful, she said. I nodded. Dinner's at 6. No tour. No small talk. I didn't owe them a show. They came in quiet, carrying bags and pie tins. Mom complimented the wood floors. Dad mumbled something about the deck view. The kids whispered to each other like they were in a museum. I kept it simple. Roast chicken, mashed sweet potatoes, warm bread, roasted carrots, red wine. No hired chef this time, I cooked it all myself. The table was smaller, pulled in close. No extra chairs, no welcome baskets, no puzzles waiting in the den. Conversation started slow. Dad asked about the weather. Mom commented on the altitude. Kelsey's husband told a bad joke that got a mercy laugh from the kids. But then it shifted. Somewhere between the second pour of wine and passing the chicken, things got real. Kelsey asked if I ever got lonely out here. I said no, not once. Mom asked why I never told them about the place. I looked her in the eye and said, would you have come if I did? No one answered that. Dad cleared his throat, then said, you built something solid here. I nodded. I did. We sat with it. Not as strangers, not as some Hallmark reunion, just as people trying to figure it out in real time. No bragging, no fake cheer. After dessert, apple crisp, nothing fancy. Kelsey helped me clear the plates. She followed me into the kitchen, drying a dish with a towel too small for her hands. She looked around, then at me. You didn't have to do this. I didn't answer right away. Just set the dish down in the rack, turned off the faucet, and looked her in the face. I know. Then I walked back to the fire. By New Year's Eve, the cabin was quiet again. Family gone. Dishes washed. Wood stacked. Nothing left but the cold and the calm. I stepped out onto the dock with a bourbon in one hand and my jacket zipped to the throat. The snow had started again. Light, slow, steady. Just enough to dust the trees and coat the edges of the frozen lake. The wind was low. The kind that didn't bite, just reminded you that you were alive. I stood there, breathing it in, glass sweating in my hand, and thought about the garage back in Des Moines. That dark little box of a room, where the air always smelled like rubber and sawdust. Where I sat cross-legged on the concrete floor, soldering wires to a busted old radio like it was some ancient artifact. No one ever came in. No one ever asked what I was building. I used to wonder if I'd ever make it out of that place, if I'd ever matter enough to be seen. And now I had silence when I wanted it, laughter when I needed it, a kitchen full of memories and a deck that held real conversations. Not perfect, not clean, but honest. I wasn't chasing their table anymore. Wasn't waiting for permission or space or a seat with my name on it. I built my own, and they showed up not because they had to, because they wanted to. That's the part that stuck. The snow kept falling. I raised my glass toward the trees, the stars, the stillness. Didn't say it loud. Didn't need to. You made it, kid.